Welcome back. In this clip, we'll like to talk about the airfield. So, an airfield can simulate a behavior of realistic wind and wake effects. Let's create the airfield and take down the important changes. So, select the particles and go inside the field solver menu, hit the option air. Alright. So, the moment we create this, we have a very nice icon that is, representing the shape of a fan. So, this is basically representing the airfield. So let's press Ctrl A and take down the important attributes what we have. So over here we have these three important attributes: wind, wake, and fan. Alright, so we'll consider them step by step. So right now we like to focus on the wind. So if I hit the option wind, you can see we have some changes inside the airfield attributes. So let's do one thing. Let's get rid of the attenuations. Let's increase the magnitude to a fairly high value. And the important thing is also, this particular field affects the particles based upon the values of the mass. So if we have the higher value of the mass, the particles will tend to move slower in comparison to those which are having the lower value of the mass. Alright, and let's do one thing. Let's increase the speed to a value of 1 and make sure that we also don't have this attribute use max distance enabled. So if this is enabled, the field will not able to execute its force beyond 20 units. Alright, now we have the Y positive direction enabled. Let's do one thing. Let's take the Z negative. Alright, and now if we play the timeline, you can see this field is wonderfully executing its force, and it's simply simulating an effect of a wind. And you can also compare its behavior in a very similar way with respect to the behavior of uniform field. Alright, so it is also respecting the overall mass of the particles. Very nice. So now let's do one thing. Let's talk about the important attribute, that is the spread. Alright, so let's take a look again, and if I play the timeline and change the camera angle, you can see that if I play the timeline, the particles are generally moving in a straight z negative directions. Alright, but if I switch on this option, which is the enable spread, then this will going to spread the particles. Now particle will definitely move in the z negative axis, but they will also get deviated with more higher angles. So let's play the timeline and take down the important change, and now you can see the particles are now getting spread, and that's pretty straightforward attribute as the name goes. But there is one another interesting effect with the spread. If you take your field over here and if you enable the option spread, you'll notice the particles which are actually now facing the fields towards the z negative axis, only these particles will get affected. The rest of the particles which are now facing the z positive directions will not even going to move. We can also examine the overall range. We can see the visuals of the spread by pressing the options Ctrl T, which will create a uniform manipulator. You can also access the same thing if you can go inside the modify menu, moving to the option transformations tools. Here we have the universal manipulator and the shortcut is Ctrl T. Alright, so right now it is giving me the magnitude and attenuations. You can click over here and just keep clicking this. Now we have the speed, give one more click, and now this is giving you the spread. So you can take down the necessary change that the spread is now actually, the spread has actually created a range. So I can also select this point and can shrink down the overall range. So it simply means that the airfield can now execute the force based upon this angle. Okay, let's play the timeline and take down the change, and you can see everything is going according to the the visuals which we have. So particles have moved from this range only because we have the spread with a value of 0.5. Let's do one thing. Let's make it a little bit more, let's shrink it down, and now if you play the timeline, you'll see only those particles are moving which are coming inside the range. If we increase the overall range, you will notice particles will start getting deviated in all this directions, but they are also moving towards the z negative axis. That's the beauty of this field. Alright, now let's do one thing. Let's close this, press the W, press the hotkey W to get to the transformation mode, move tool basically. Now let's do one thing. let's get rid of the enable spread, and let's do one thing. Let's use the range. Instead of having this field affecting the entire particles, let's create a suitable range. And with this, we can also understand the meaning of the inherent velocity. So first, quickly create the volume shape. So let's go inside the volume shape, use the option sphere, and let's increase the overall size of this field. Alright, dip it down. And now if I play the timeline, you'll see the field is definitely, affecting the particles which are inside the range of the field. That is also something very nice. And let's do one thing. Let's increase the inherent velocity. Well, this is something really very important. All right, and this particular attribute is totally independent of the direction we have. Let's do one thing. Let's even, if I just make this thing 0, and if you play the timeline, you'll see nothing will happen, because the inherent velocity simply will take down the velocities of the moving fields. So for that, you need to make this animatable. You need to animate the field, and then you need to create a kind of a wake effect. So let's do one thing. Let's increase the values of inherent velocity to somewhere around 15. And now let's do one thing. Let's use the interactive play. And now if I start sliding, you can see the field is wonderfully waking the particles. So all those particles which are uh, getting in the range of these fields, they have started moving because of the inherent velocities of the air field, and that is something really very important. All right, so we can also enable the spread. So with this attribute, you'll see the particle will tend to get more, they'll they'll get spread away. So that is also something very nice. All right, so you can see this is now becoming a multi-purpose field. You have the same behavior like the way you have in the uniform field, but now you can also use the spread. You can also limit the effect with the help of the spread by taking the visuals of the overall range. Then you can utilize the inherent velocities of this field, and this is something which is really very nice. All right, so notice one thing. Once you actually enable the inherent velocity, you won't be able to move the particles, and to make them move, you need to move the entire field. You need to animate the field, and that is something really very important. All right, so that was all about the airfield. I hope so you must have understood the concepts of the airfield. Now let's move to the next clip, where we talk about another important field, that is the drag.